for having me here. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you for everyone who's here to partake in such a wonderful dialogue. I'm not going to waste your time much because I'm young, I speak a lot, so I'm just going to keep it short and to the point. Um, when I think of restitution, I think of restoration and I think of healing. When I think of healing and restoration, I think of trust. When I think of South Africa, I see no trust. When I talk about trust, I mean, if you go to a lawyer, for you to take advice from that lawyer, you need to trust him. You're not going to take a lawyer who's studied, I don't know, music, art, I don't know. But yes, trust is a very important component in order for a relationship to work. And now we find ourselves in a very volatile, hostile relationship. Um, where there is no trust. And I'm going to tell you my story, or the stories that have led me not to trust you people in this room. I'm just joking. I'm not good at the joke thing, so I'll try. Okay, so yes, I don't know if I should speak in the third person or first person. Okay, yes, okay. Well, I'm from the University of Pretoria. I served as the Secretary General of the EFF Student Command, UP, and I'm the Social Welfare Officer, which I think suits me far better because I get to deal with people, I get to deal with their stories, I get to deal with their hearts, I get to deal with their truth. And during my time serving as Secretary General of the branch, and during this time of serving as Social Welfare Officer, one thing that struck out when I began about trust is that us as a generation, let me talk about my generation, the millennials or the born frees, I don't know what we call it. Sometimes I'm a millennial, sometimes I'm a born free. I'm just a South African. I'm an ordinary citizen with a voice, and yeah. So now, during my course, during my time serving as secretary, we deal with students on a daily basis, and we deal with students who would have the same problems. Either they're sleeping on campus, sleeping in the disability bathrooms, where there's larger spaces to sleep on campus, and they're able to form, they're able to get some form of comfort because they have no access to accommodation on campus. These same students that we deal with, they wouldn't have access to food. They come with a loaf of bread in their bag, which they would say that, okay, on this day I'll have two. Maybe if I'm writing tomorrow, I'll have three. If I'm writing the next day, if I'm not writing the next day, then I don't have to have two, I have one. And they proportion their food accordingly. You'd have girls who'd come to the office who would use contraceptives that haven't been tested, but because they didn't want to have their period. Something as simple, well, not as simple as a period, but something as sensitive as a period, they were willing to put themselves through so much danger because they knew that we can't afford sanitary pads once a month so that we can go to school and study. So rather, let's take it off. Okay, but anyways. Now, in all of this, I realized one pattern, that they coming to us as students. I'm a student too, but we have our parents, we have civil society, we have the public sector, we have the private sector, we have the churches. Now, backtrack 9 months before, the University of Pretoria, we were having a protest on insourcing of workers who were being denied of benefits, they were being denied of pension, they were being paid 2,500 Rand a month. Some of these workers had been working at the university for over 20 years, but hadn't seen a day of pension fund. So we took this upon ourselves now to tell the story for our parents, whereas for us as a youth, we expect the parents and society to tell our stories, but we expect them, for us, in order for us to trust the society and members of the church and members of government and members of the private sector. There needs to be some sort of action. You know, we have all of these rights that are vested in our constitution. We have the right to sanitation, security, education, health. All of those single-handedly, in a day, sitting down, not doing anything, the University of Pretoria, I see that violated in one student's story. And I'm expected to trust my government. I'm not saying that I don't want to, but I'm saying that in order for us to move forward, we need to be able to trust each other once more. And as the youth, it's a call to society that when we speak, when we cry, we either called vandals or we called chacharakh, we're called just, we can't do anything. We call childish, we call mature, we call young, but where do we get our space to tell our story? Where do we get time to heal from what's been happening or what has happened? So I think that, yes, okay, yeah. It is such a privilege to participate in this initiative, and we truly thank the HSRC and the partners for initiating a project of this nature. I do hope that we will have these kinds of dialogues in workplaces, villages, farms, and other places where ordinary people can engage on these matters. I also love the intergenerational dialogue with people I have utmost admiration, but I must indicate that whilst I admire all of you in this room, I particularly admire the two young people sitting next to me for their bravery. And young Mr. Zalata was saying to me, I'm brave. I was saying, for me, I do my job. For him, he stuck his neck for the truth, because his father stuck his neck for the truth, and it was his time now to stick his neck out for the truth, and he did that and faced the consequences. Restitution, it is a very important subject, but what does it mean? As I was thinking about restitution, I just wondered, do we all share the same vision regarding what is it, why do we need restitution, what do we need to do to ensure restitution? Where are we in South Africa with regard to restitution? For my own reflection, before just talking about my own story, I thought I would start with the Constitution. It promises everyone in this country a particular dream. It promises to heal the divisions of the past. It promises a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it. It promises everyone a freed potential, and then promises everyone an improved quality of life. Is it possible to have a South Africa that belongs to all who live in it, without anybody feeling like a Cinderella, without restitution? Is it possible to have a South Africa where everyone's quality of life is improved without restitution? Is it possible to have a South Africa where everyone's potential is freed without restitution? Is it possible to heal the divisions of the past without restitution?
And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. In the last 22 years of democracy, have we ensured restitution? And if so, what have we achieved? And it depends on what do we regard as restitution. You'll agree with me, restitution, as was said by the first speaker, is restoring something to wholesomeness, restoring what has been taken. It is ensuring justice of some sort. And if I take my own story, I'm the daughter of a domestic worker and a general worker. My parents worked hard. My father worked hard. He grew up in a farm in Dackerskraal. He couldn't go to school because they wouldn't let him go to school. He never saw the inside of a class. He taught himself to read and write. But later he bought property at a place called Albertine, similar to Alexandra, similar to Sophia Town. Bought property in Albertine, but by the time we had the land restoration process, he didn't have his documents. But he did well for himself. He had a home, a Hurund house, the one given by the government, which he couldn't own because he wasn't allowed to own that house. Eventually they got a 99-year lease. My parents invested a lot in education, but they couldn't take us to university. After I completed grade 10, my father arranged for me to go and study nursing, because initially he thought it was important for us to be educated well enough to be able to take instructions from a white person and get good jobs for ourselves. And he thought, having done grade 10, we could do that very well. And when I refused to go and study nursing, he stopped paying for my education. In fact, he chased me away from home. But that's what he knew then. My mother, on the other hand, had been adopted by missionaries. But because she was poor, and missionaries, as you know them, are not the kind of people who buy people good clothes. They do. They make sure you're educated. She wanted good clothes. And she saw the other girls who had gone into domestic work, who wore good clothes and wore wigs, and they looked lovely. And she left school and went into domestic work. And she regretted it ever since. And she thought we needed to be educated and send us to school. But to cut the long story short, I come from that generation, but through the generosity of strangers from grade 11, I never had to worry about school fees. And when I went to university, I never even had to worry about pocket money. I had enough pocket money to send some of it back to my home so that they could have some of that money. After education, I worked for free in the trade union movement, where I didn't anything, but it really didn't matter. Those were the days. The generosity of strangers made sure that we could have the school, we could have money for transport and food. The new democracy, through affirmative action, and possibly through my own hard work a bit, I have enjoyed the fruits of democracy. I have been pub protector for 7 years, and quite a substantial amount of money. I was able, even before becoming pub protector, to buy property, car, house, send my children to good schools, send them to university. One of them going to a private university. I'm somebody who came from suffered apartheid, but somehow the new world or the new society has made it up to me. That's what you think. The new world has made it up to me. But that's if we think that restitution is only financial. When I met an Australian senator, I think it was Ridgway. He's an Aboriginal. When I met him in 2001, he told me that the mistake that has been made in societies where people have been oppressed is to think that restoration should only be financial. And we talk today about people who are plundering. We talk today about people who are looting. We talk today about a society that is threatening to become something similar to the animal farm, where if people are looting, they say we're doing so because we fought for you, or rather we're doing so because we deserve that for the work we do. And if I go back to the discussion I had with Senator Ridgway many years ago, he asked the question, if we're looking at restitution or restoration, are we missing the point if we're only restoring the economic damage that was done in the past? What about the spiritual damage? When I grew up, for example, we gravitated towards Marxism. I don't know the young generation, Wenzile will speak later, is not doing the same, gravitating towards Marxism, because we were told that religion is the opium of the people. And there were even those that said that part of stealing land was facilitated by religious leaders. Whether that's true or not, but that's what was done. Meaning that connection with our Creator was somehow killed during that period. That accountability to the power that created you was killed. And when that hole is created in your soul, how do you feel it? But add to that another hole that was created during apartheid, diminished human dignity, the feeling of worthlessness, the feeling of being told that you are a subhuman being. What have we done to restore that? But what have we done to restore that feeling? What have we done to help those who thought so, who thought others were subhuman beings, to get them to understand that others are not subhuman beings? What have we done about those who, when they see a young black man, I have 3 young black men at my house, run away because they think they're about to be robbed because of stereotyping? Isn't that part of restoration? Land. The conversation I had with Senator Ridgway was with the Aboriginals, they restored land back to the people. But is restoring land to people enough when the skills to till the land were stolen during the time when you were taken away from the land? You go back, you have that asset, but you don't know what to do with it. But even if you know what to do with it, that sense of communality, that sense of working together as a cooperative has been taken away. Is that part of restoration? So those are the questions I was asking myself, that a person who sees somebody like me, people like me who have cars, houses, you say, these ones don't need any restoration. But are we right? Our children today are crying, "Fees must fall," which Wenzile is going to talk about. How many grown-ups care? How many in this room can say they've bothered to find out what is it all about? How many of us have thought we need to do something about it? Yes, when they banned something, we all cried. I see them on my Twitter account, people, when I tweet about it and saying, if we say, yesterday I tweeted and said that, if we say that violence is the language of the disempowered, is the state's response with an iron fist, helping. I got different responses. Some were saying thugs should be treated as thugs. But there is a young fellow by the name of Gar Jaffet, I think Gar Jaffet. He started a project similar to this, just to end it. It's part of Heartlines. And he's created a movie that I would advise everyone to watch. It's called Beyond the River. And the conversation that he has started is, what's your story? That we should meet, and you just talk about where do you come from and what are you dealing with right now. So that before you judge the next person, you know where do they come from. Whether you're black, whether you're white, Indian, old, young, foreigner, or national, just find out what's this person's story. He's from Rwanda. What's his story? He's white. Is he rich? Just because he's white. I met a white person who's a Rothschild, and I thought he must have been born with a silver spoon. And I just discovered that he didn't even need our school shoes. And he started with the bursary, so what's his story? But that's the thing for me is if we understand each other's stories, if we understand the impact of the past on each one of us, perhaps we will understand that we each can make a difference. There honestly is a new world that is waiting to be born. But it can only be born if each one of us understand our role as midwives for that new world. And we don't need to move mountains to give birth to that new world. We just have to do what we can do with the little that we have. Thank you.